Well, hi, Liberty. I thought I would serve up a midweek snack from the scriptures. So I'm going to read from 1 Timothy chapter 5, just a few verses, and then we will kick those verses around. So I read from 1 Timothy 5, beginning at verse 3. Honor widows who are truly widows. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show godliness to their own household and to make some return to their parents, for this is pleasing in the sight of God. She who is truly a widow, left all alone, has set her hope on God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. But she who is self-indulgent is dead even while she lives. Command these things as well, so that they may be without reproach. In this passage, the Apostle Paul is providing some guidelines for the church to help them decide what widows to regularly support with the resources of the church. And he mentions two types of widows, and he sets these two types of widows in contrast. And one type of widow lives for pleasure, and she is said to be dead even while she lives. And I want you to stop there for a second with me on that comment. That's a sobering remark, that God is treating a self-indulgent lifestyle like it's a living death or a sign of spiritual death. It's not what you would expect from someone who has come alive to God. And if she has come alive to God, she is acting like she is dead to God's purposes, because her focus is not on faithfulness to God. Her focus is on the next fun thing, just living for the next fun thing that's right in front of her face and the next feel-good thing that follows the next fun thing. And I think you and I both know that you don't have to be a widow to have that problem or to have your life overtaken by that temptation. You just have to live in the United States of America, which in a lot of ways is a culture of the next fun thing. We live in a society that very much promotes the love of leisure and a recreationally rich lifestyle, and that's an expectation that's served up to us. And if we're not careful, it can really derail us from God's purposes from our lives and pull us away from asking the better question of what is the faithful thing or the next faithful thing that I can be giving my time to. One of the great secrets of the Christian life is that if you pursue faithfulness to God, you're going to be surprised by joy along the way. If you chase faithfulness, joy is going to chase you. But if you chase the feeling or sensation of joy, you're ultimately not going to live faithful to God, and you're going to lose all joy in the end. Now, the other type of widow has set her hope on God, and she gives herself to the ministry of prayer. And prayer is always a faithful thing for us to be giving ourselves to. And perhaps this widow in her older age has more unstructured time on her hands. Perhaps this widow in her older age is not able to serve God in some of the more physically demanding ways that she used to serve God. But no matter what, prayer plays big in the use of her time, and God commends her to us for it. And we want to learn from her example that prayer is always a faithful thing that we can be giving ourselves to. And according to this passage, it just testifies to a heart that is truly hoping in God. And so, Liberty, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of us have more unstructured time on our hands. There's been a lot of closures, a lot of confinement, a lot of layoffs, a lot of scaled back hours, and many of us do find more unstructured time on our hands. And so let's learn from the example of this widow, and let's invest the use of that time into what we know is pleasing to God and serving God in steadfast prayer. It is in prayer that we bring down God's aid for other believers. And there are so many believers right now that need God's aid as they have been impacted greatly by this pandemic. It's in prayer that we carry forward the plans and agenda of God's kingdom, that we intercede for a nation in crisis, that we stay engaged in the spiritual battle, that we fight for the spiritual health of God's household. And prayer is a sign, a steadfast prayer is a sign that the great hope of our hearts is where it belongs with God in heaven. And so may that be you, may that be me, and may the peace of Jesus be yours in abundance.